Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Richard, make sure you whack this thing out.
Now, kind of having to do this blind because my SIM card is actually in the modem, so I can't monitor what's going on. Everything's being recorded.
I'll let you know when I turn it on. I'll actually tell you. I'll be later about it.
Oh yeah, but they just can't hear. I don't know what the signal. I can kind of see it, but there's nobody here that I know that can check their phone.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
It'll be.
Yes. All right. There he is.
There it is too.
Yeah.
He's trying to convert Corey.
Oh, Corey's here.
He wants to be converted.
He is, isn't he? Look at him. Oh, I love that he's here. Gosh, he's still my favourite. Every time. Every time. This is hilarious.
I must take my head off to him too after 3 years.
Okay, good evening everybody. We're just going to go into our seats now. If you haven't already had a drink, you're still able to go down. The camera won't capture you and the panel won't hear you. So help yourselves throughout the night to drinks, coffees and biscuits, but we'll be starting in about 1 minute. Thank you.
Based on your comments about my wrong attitude.
Well, I it's better tonight.
Michael's first. Yeah, he'll be the first speaker after me.
Want a cup of tea? Do you want a cup of tea?
That's right. That's good.
Tēnā tātou. Before we start, so that we open this space in a very fruitful way, can you hear us? Mike, can you please turn that up? Testing. Can everybody hear me now? From the back? Okay, I've got some good news and bad news for those that are sitting at the back. Above you is the aircon. Sadly, we still haven't been able to turn it off. So, if you are to the front, the warmer you are, but if you want to stay at the back, it will keep you awake. Okay? And before we start, just to set the space, we're going to ask Rawiri to open the floor with a karakia, and then I'll get to the housekeeping and the house rules of tonight. Rawiri, can I get you to open, please?
Tēnā tātou. Ka tauiria ke rā o tātou nei mihi. Ka tukuna atu rā ki o tātou nei atua. Ka taumai anō rā tēnei mea te kotahitanga ki waingano i ki tēnei hui-huinga. I runga anō i te aroha, i runga anō i te aroha o tētei ki tētei. Ka toitu anō rā te mana o te tangata i roto i tō tātou nei whai. I raro i ngā manaakitanga o te iwi take-take o konei. Ko ia te ura o ngā te kauwhata, me ngā hapu, ngā marae maha e noho nei ki tēnei whaitō o tātou. Tēnei anō te mauri tū, te mauri ora, o tēnei hui-huinga, i raro i ngā manaakitanga o ngā rangatira, e tū nei, e hui nei, hui, tui, whiti ki te ora. Haie, hui e, tāi.
Tēnā koe tūngange. Tonight we have, please come in, don't be shy, take any seat you want. Tonight you'll see our wonderful panellists. We have our Mayor-elect Michael Ford. We also have our rural resident, former councillor, former business owner Phil Marsh. And we have the former MP, former Mayor Ian McKelvie tonight. As you can see, there's a camera at the front. That is because this is being live streamed. So these wonderful gentlemen are going to be live streamed tonight for the masses, mostly for Manawatu, hopefully. And more than that, after they have finished their speeches, we'll have an open floor for you to ask them any questions. Those questions will not be live streamed. That is when that stops recording and you have the freedom to ask or challenge any of the speakers, including myself, about the value of Māori wards. Now that the fun bit is over, I'm going to get to the best bit, and that's the housekeeping rules. That's where the wharepaku and toilets are. So out the exit, to your left, you'll have the wahine, to your right, you'll have the tāne, female and male. If an emergency, in case of a fire, I would ask you to calmly leave the building. Please exit that way, walk calmly outside, and the car park is our holding area of safety. That's in case of emergency, but I'm feeling really lucky tonight, we won't have one. In order, the speakers are sitting in order. They have about 10 minutes as their maximum. For some of them, they believe that will be shorter. I'll be timing them tonight, as I'm your MC. For those that don't know me, no Ngāti Kōwhata, no Te Reo, I whakapapa here in Manawatu. I'm the Māori Ward Councillor, and I'm also unopposed, which means I'll be stepping into the space again. Even though I'll be MCing tonight, there will be times where I'll fill in gaps between the men. Thank you for letting me allow to fill those gaps in, just in case. And at the end of the night, I'll also be joining the panel. I'll stop being an MC, and you get to ask me any questions that you like. Ka pai? Awesome. So good evening, everyone. To everyone at home that's sitting on the sofa watching us, thank you for tuning in. Pleasure to have you. No mai, whakapiri mai. And without further ado, I'll let the panel take a seat, and we will have our first speaker. Now, I know most of you know him, but I think it's important to always give a bio, and that's to whakamana and enhance the speakers that are here tonight. So it's my pleasure to introduce our Mayor-elect, who's gone in unopposed, 3 trienniums as the Deputy Mayor to Helen Warboys that's sitting here tonight. Ngā mihi ki a koe, Helen. Also has over 40 years experience in the real estate industry, over 30 years experience in governance. Wonderfully smart doctorate daughter that's sitting here tonight, so ngā mihi to her, because that's a big connection to this father. So ngā mihi ki a koutou, ngā mihi ki a koroa, and Michael, would you like to take away the first 10 minutes, please?
Well, thanks very much to Manawatu District Elections 2025. Bridget,
Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this forum tonight. It should be interesting. I have no idea what Ian and Philson are going to say, and I'd say we all have a different perspective. I expect that both sides of the Māori ward debate will be slightly grumpy with me by the time I've finished, and right now, my big hope is that Bridget is regretting inviting me. I'm not here to tell you how to vote in the referendum. Our current council are fairly evenly split on the subject. I came tonight to share my perspective and experience, which includes being Deputy Mayor of Manawatu District for the last 9 years. I voted 5 times on the subject of Māori wards, which will become 6 when I vote in the upcoming referendum. I also did a lot of work in a 2-week period in May 2021 between votes, which I will share with you. Māori wards in local government are the equivalent of Māori seats in central government. Their purpose is to provide specific representation for Māori who otherwise may not have a voice in government. We're not England, we're New Zealand. This referendum has nothing to do with Manawatu District Council. It's a central government instruction. Labour and National and their support parties have made Māori wards a political football, whereas they haven't done the same with Māori seats in Parliament. I'm not impressed with this on again, off again, on again, off again, what I would call childish game being played at central government. Māori wards should at least be treated the same as Māori seats in Parliament, in my opinion. If Labour want them, they should have legislated for them rather than throwing councils a hand grenade as they did in 2021, splitting our community. The current government doesn't trust our council to make the decision for our community, hence the referendum in October. So I'm critical of both sides. Labour and National should find common ground, and that would stop the childish game of ping pong on what is an important topic. Do you support Māori wards? It's a no-win question. Whichever way you answer, you're wrong in the eyes of a significant section of the community. My opinion is not actually important here. This government says that your opinion in a referendum is what is important, and the result in the referendum will decide whether or not we have a Māori ward from 2028. Council has no say in the matter. But the Māori ward is safe for the next 3 years, and I would congratulate Councillor Bridget Bell on being re-elected unopposed to that seat. Still one person, one vote, and for MDC it's 1 voice out of 12. In actual fact, for those on the Māori roll here, there are no votes for Manawatu District Council this election because Bridget and I have both been elected unopposed. There is, however, the referendum vote and votes for Horizons Regional Council. For many, it comes down to whether you favour equity or equality. Equality treats everyone the same, whereas equity acknowledges that some, in this case Māori, who hold a special position in this country, don't start from the same starting line and need assistance to get to the starting line. A common explanation is to imagine 2 people wanting to watch a game of sport, but there's a 6-foot fence in the way. One of the people is 6'6", more like Philson, and the other one's 5'9", that's me. Equality treats them both equally. They both have to stand on the ground. One can see the game and the other can't. Equity gives me, the 5'9" person, a stool to stand on so that we can both see the game. I guess the alternative was for me to buy a ticket. Many who favour equity do so on the basis of until it is no longer required, i.e. until the health, education, life expectancy, income, incarceration rate, housing, crime, unemployment statistics are the same for Māori as they are for non-Māori. I personally favour equity over equality, but I will defend those who believe in equality against accusations of racism. For those opposed to Māori wards, I can tell you that the world at council has not ended since we've had a Māori ward. Having a Māori ward councillor provides an avenue for councils to collaborate with Māori, fostering positive relationships, and having spent the last 9 years in council, I can tell you that it is better to have positive relationships than fractious relationships with Māori and local iwi in particular. And I say that from experience. Apart from just wanting to have good relationships, we have to consult iwi on so much, especially through the RMA, the Resource Management Act. And a strained relationship can slow down the development and growth of the district. This is a real and pragmatic reason to vote for a Māori ward. and I'll give you an example in a minute. We have been fortunate to have a high-quality Māori ward councillor in Bridget Bell, who has not only brought the views of Māori to the council, but she's been successful in getting iwi and marae committees to engage with council, which has led to council treating our marae, I think there's 9 or 12, similarly treating our 9 to 12 marae similarly to our 16 very successful community committees, with a small budget, ability to apply to another contestable fund, and a liaison councillor. A Māori ward councillor has to make decisions based on what is best for the entire Manawatu district, just as a Fielding ward or rural ward councillor does. They're not there just to push issues important to Māori. You are the people who have to decide your view on Māori wards, not council. I've voted 5 times on Māori wards. The first time was in 2017, when council considered establishing a Māori ward. I voted for a Māori ward based on my preference for equity as opposed to equality. The majority at council voted to establish a Māori ward. But immediately after that vote took place, Hobson's Pledge and others organised a successful petition demanding a referendum. There was a referendum in 2018, with more people voting in that than in the 2019 local election. Such was the feeling. 23% supported a Māori ward and 77% opposed, so the Māori ward did not get established. My yes vote was on the losing side. 3 years later, in 2021, Labour's Minister Nanaia Mahuta changed the legislation, with the outcome being that the previous referendums were no longer binding. Councils could again consider establishing Māori wards, and in early May a motion came to Council proposing that we do. I note that the government specifically said that while the past referendums were no longer binding, community sentiment could be taken into account. I'm a councillor representing the views of the community. So for that vote, I put my own preference to the side and acknowledged the strong community sentiment based on the 77% who opposed a Māori ward in the previous referendum, and I voted against establishing a Māori ward. That vote was interesting in that Council had 4 councillors who were very much in support of a Māori ward, 4 who were very much opposed, 1 who had a conflict of interest, lucky bugger, and Mayor Helen and myself in the middle, who voted in accordance with strong majority community sentiment. The motion to establish a Māori ward was therefore lost, 6-4 with 1 abstention. And that is when the fun began. Iwi and Māori were not pleased, and they made their displeasure known very strongly. You will remember the hikoi leading to haka on the steps of the council building. We invited the leaders of the hikoi into the council chamber, and they respectfully made their position known. There was a period of 2 weeks when Mayor Helen and I tried very hard through several hui and to find a compromised position with local iwi, but we were unsuccessful. From their point of view, it was Māori ward or non-cooperation. A second motion was put to reverse the decision 2 weeks later. On the 20th of May 2021, another vote was taken. Mayor Helen and I agonised over this vote, and we were still trying to decide well into the evening the night before. We wrote lists of reasons for and reasons against, with the 2 main considerations coming down to supporting the majority community opinion versus the real risk of non-cooperation, meaning that RMA processes would grind to a standstill and growth and development of the district would stall. We had experienced the district being in decline previously, with businesses closing and population declining, and it was soul destroying, and the best way to increase rates per property. Sadly, many of the people who opposed Māori wards had no understanding of this situation or risk, and many were actually developers and people who would be the most detrimentally affected by the growth and development grinding to a standstill. Mayor Helen and I decided that the economic health of the district, in this case, outweighed community sentiment, and so we reversed our vote from 2 weeks earlier. At the time of our decision, we thought that our 2 votes would decide the outcome, but another councillor who had voted no changed to yes, and the councillor with the conflict of interest no longer had the conflict of interest and also voted yes. So the vote ended up 8-3 in favour of establishing a Māori ward, not 6-4 with 1 abstention. And so, at the last election in 2022, the Māori ward was duly established. Our council's only involvement in this issue in the last 4 years after voting to establish our Māori ward in 2021 was last year, when the government made us address the topic again, and we voted by strong majority, including my vote, not to remove or disestablish our Māori ward. It was known, however, that if we didn't disestablish the Māori ward, there would be this referendum ahead of us. That fact may have affected some councillors' votes. That brings us today and the referendum. So I've voted 4 times in favour of a Māori ward and once against. Even though the referendum has nothing to do with council, I do worry about a possible backlash against council if the referendum results in disestablishing the Māori ward in 2028. Council and Te Kotui Reo, which is the collective representing all marae in Manawatu district, are working towards hopefully establishing a joint committee to discuss all matters of mutual interest to the marae committees and council. This does not replace the Māori ward councillor role, but does give you an indication of the importance that both sides place on good communication and good working relationships. For the reasons I've mentioned, I will be voting in favour of retaining our Māori ward at the upcoming referendum. But my reasons, no doubt, will be different to other people's.
Michael, thank you for sharing your story. I think one of the little points that Michael talked about, he was really honest about from voting no to voting yes, and his experience of having a Māori ward councillor sitting in council was training. So I want to thank you too, Michael, for the honesty that you shared tonight. I don't regret inviting you, not at all. I do regret the length of papers you brought. See, the papers that you see tonight, the 10 that you see, he does it in council every Thursday. So we always look forward to his advice and lengthy speeches. And I'm really proud that you made it just after 10 minutes, 13. For him, that's fantastic. So all those tuning in tonight, thank you for staying with us. I hope you have. But no, big mihi to you, Michael. Thank you. I would love to introduce our next speaker, Phil Marsh. It's a privilege to introduce you. Phil voted yes in the non-binding referendum time when we had council elections. He's one of the 4 that Michael spoke about. But he also was a local business owner here. He is a rural resident. Notify and give you mana of how much of an ally you have been during the hikoi. So what a privilege it is to have you sitting at this panel. So ngā mihi kia koe, Phil. Now's your time.
Good evening. Tēnā koutou katoa. My name's Philson Marsh, and I was a councillor at MDC from 2016 until 2022 and campaigned for a Māori ward. I'll tell you why. A little bit different to Michael from the political point of view, but I'll give you a little bit of a coverage of that, plus my personal reasons for doing so. In 1998, a Māori consultation standing committee was created to liaise between council and local tangata whenua, particularly around planning and resource management. The membership of this committee expanded and was known as Ngā Manu Taiko. On a practical level, this was cumbersome, requiring a great deal of human resources, time and organisation. For Māori, it was a place but with no voting rights, and a lack of equity. True partnership should bring an authentic governance relationship. Please understand that governance is not government. Governance includes the practices, processes and policies of an organisation. Government is elected to make and enforce law, manage the country's affairs, protect citizens from internal and external harm. In 2018, Council moved to establish a Māori ward, but a referendum led by those opposed and at great cost to the district quashed this possibility. The opportunity to create a Māori ward only came every 3 years. Without relitigating historical details, 12 marae cut formal ties with the Council in 2021 after Council deferred the decision to create the ward. I was one of the 4 councillors who then put the notice of motion and the vote for Māori wards be resubmitted. The vote was taken still in 2021, after the largest and most dignified march that Fielding had ever seen, led by the Māori collective Te Kauture Rio Tamata, and supported by representatives of the wider Manawatu communities and organisation. It was a very proud day. Now in 2025, as Michael suggests, because the Māori ward was established after 2021, new legislation demands that Council must first vote on the support of the Māori ward. They have, and they do, and it must now go back to a referendum to the public. This is not required where Māori wards were established prior to 2021. Where's the equity in that? Tomorrow night, I'm emceeing here at another meeting where the urban councillors will be giving their speeches and why they should be elected. So why do we have an urban ward and a rural ward? These are two distinct communities with distinct needs. Can we overturn these? No. Could the urban ward demand, for example, a referendum to ask for the equity from standardising rates across every household in the Manawatu? No. Yet the very people, our Manawatu tangata whenua, with whom we state we are in partnership with, are held back by this very mechanism. The treaty signed by Waitangi by Māori could, in one man's view, have been intended to exclude the Māori voice. I'm not here to push a political barrow. I simply offer a personal perspective. I may be older, male and pale, and remain so motivated by my life experiences. Our foster son, now grown, along with his sisters, spent time in state care. He was removed from dysfunction, placed in a nice state home, run by a couple who looked extremely like myself and my wife. He was terrorised into silence by them, and until he had a permanent home with us, could he establish his voice again within his community. We also broke our hearts over the death of a young Māori boy that we supported through our business, where his family only saw the gangs as an aspiration. There were pressures on him as a young Māori we struggled to understand, and he actually struggled to withstand. As Pākehā, there is much we don't understand, but we can educate ourselves, engage in uncomfortable conversations, and advocate for those who are working so very hard to change aspirations and outcomes for their tamariki. We can listen and support, but only effectively if we hear those voices in the first place. Positive change only comes when communities work together. One person, one vote sounds well and good, but if you're a community who outnumbers another community, your will prevails. Te ao Māori guides how Māori interact with each other and their environment, fostering a sense of responsibility and reciprocity. It promotes connections between people and the environment, emphasising respect and nature and relationships. A Māori ward gives one vote around a table with 11 other people. One vote, no more, no less than any other. I chaired the Strategic Planning Committee for 6 years and constantly asked why we couldn't set plans in place for longer periods. In contrast, many of our local marae, for example, have strategic plans and visions that span up to 100 years and more. Māori perspectives, cultural practices and business acumen bring opportunity for us all. It is inclusive, not exclusive. With Māori representation on council, we can be better citizens, a stronger community. We can be better guardians of our natural resources for a sustainable future. We can better maintain the health and well-being of those unseen and unheard. 2025. We shouldn't even be seeing this as anything other than how it should have always been. One voice in 12. Ngā mihi.
Oh, ngā mihi ki a koe, Phil. Some of the points that Phil brought up very clearly was that it's one voice of 12. That's the makeup of our council. We have 5 fielding urban councillors, we have 5 rural councillors, we have 1 Māori ward. with the establishment of the Māori ward, it didn't take away any representation from the rural community, nor did it take away representation from the urban fielding community. It rather added to the seat. It added value. So, ngā mihi ki a koe, Phil, for explaining that for us tonight and for the viewers at home. To be honest, the last speaker of the night, there's not really much intro I need to give him. You all know who he is. But I think it's really, really important for us to hear someone who has sat in council before as our mayor, who's also sat in Parliament as a national MP, who is one of the longest standing rural families. I believe you're fifth generation, Ian, if James is six, that he's said he was. Oh, that might be kind. It's all right. But I think it's really important to hear another perspective and what his views are around iwi relationships and what Māori representation brings to the table. So, ngā mihi ki a koe, Ian.
Thank you, Bridget. I won't be quite as eloquent as the previous two speakers. And I'm not here to criticise governments or councils. I'm here to put my point of view, I guess, as to why I think we go where we're going. And I want to go back to about 1870 to start, because if you look at the political structure of New Zealand, we've had Maori seats in New Zealand, what are called Maori seats in New Zealand, since 1870 odd. And as I think our Mayor-elect pointed out, the government hasn't been game to change them. Now, so you go back that far, I'm going to explain some of my reasons for thinking the way I think. You go back that far and those Maori seats represented a fair selection or cross-section of New Zealand. You come to about 1927, I think, or 28, where the last, what I would term centrist or right-wing even politician was elected to a Maori seat. Since then, those Maori seats have been held by Labour, New Zealand First, and more recently to Party Maori. And I'm explaining this because this is the reason that the governments historically have been so divisive or divided on this issue. So then you get to 2002 and the Local Government Act put in place under Helen Clark's government, which in many ways was pretty reasonable for local government. I think it was intended to go a bit further than it did. They intended to get us to a system of government, of local government, a little bit like Britain had. They obviously got frightened at the last minute and took some stuff out of that bill, but they also put in place a ridiculous situation which enabled councils to run a referendum on whether or not to hold a Maori seat. And I think it's been pointed out by both the previous speakers that when you've got 18% of a sector of your community, they're never going to win a referendum, which is intended to be divisive, basically, because if you think about putting those referendum in place, they are divisive. They're inevitably going to be divisive because you're pitting one part of our community against the other, basically. So that was the first mistake that was made by a government in 2002, sorry. And I tend to disagree with Philson on one thing because, I agree on the point that whilst we have rural wards and urban wards, I can only vote for 5 councillors. I can't vote for the other 5. I don't like that system. I think we should all be in together. And I'm going to contradict myself in a minute on that. But I do think it's ridiculous that we elect a council of which I only can vote for half of, for example, because I'm a rural voter, not an urban voter. And if you're on the Maori roll, effectively, you now vote for a Maori councillor, if in fact you've got one. And so it's a very interesting way of looking at things. So the situation since 2022 has become very divided. 2002, sorry, has become very divisive, I think. Now, I was fortunate enough to be the Mayor of Manawatu for a little while, and we went through 2 representation reviews in that time. The Māori Consultative Committee at that time was, I think, pretty, they operated pretty well. They came to the conclusion at both those representation reviews that it wasn't appropriate to force the community to make a decision via a referendum as to whether or not we have a Maori ward. In other words, they felt it would be divisive and they made that decision. The council backed that or supported that decision that was made by that Māori Consultative Committee at the time. Now, the issue I take with Wilson on is that the representation reviews can force referendum, and we could have a referendum in the Manawatu to do away with the wards, no problem at all. All we've got to do is get enough people to form the referendum and then get someone like Andrew Corrie to take one side or the other and a win. So if you see what I mean, they've transformed or tried to transfer democracy that works in a situation where everyone's involved into a situation where it's only involving 18% of our, or less than 18% of our population actually, because the Maori role wouldn't contain 18% of our population. So it's forced, in my view, a very divisive situation. So then the Labor government came along and tried to change that, or did change it, but they forced an issue onto many in our community and in Parliament that they didn't like. And so that's caused the problem, or not the problem, it's caused the current National Act and New Zealand First government to take a different approach to it and go back to the referendum situation. I think all of that's extremely unfortunate for our community. I think it's divisive for New Zealand, and for that reason, and probably that reason alone, I don't like divisiveness. I often tell people when I was the Mayor of Manawatu, the very first council meeting I was forced to vote, I lost it, I think 10-1. We never had another vote at the time I was Mayor. I'm going to get beaten again. So what I'm really saying is you can get to a consensus on things without forcing an issue on it. And I think that successive governments have forced our council, who I think is a very good council, into a very difficult situation. And it's forced that council to have quite vociferous opinions within itself, and Michael's explained that very well. So I don't like that either, because I think the council is there to put our will in place. And so the government's telling the council now how to do it. Well, that's the government's role actually, is to tell councils how to do things. But unfortunately they're telling us to do things that I think are not necessary in the best interests of our community. And so I think that that's basically the reasons why I would support a Maori ward, because I want to support the status quo personally, but I also think that it does add value to what goes on in our community. And you're sure you can make the argument that we've got Maori people on council, and have had ever since I started with the council, a number of them actually. But there's a big difference between a Maori person on the council and a person who represents Maori on the council. And I think that's the issue that we're dealing with here. And so the reason that I think we should, I personally would support it, is I think it's been a very divisive issue throughout New Zealand's recent history anyway, and probably throughout our history. And just to go back for a second to the 2002 Act, the only council that put in place a Maori ward at that time was the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. It worked extremely successfully there, and I don't see why it wouldn't work successfully from now on. Now, there's one other argument I don't buy. I don't buy this one vote, one person, because I can't for the life of me see how anyone's getting 2 votes in this business. You're either voting for a Maori ward, or in our case, we're voting for a rural ward or an urban ward. We don't get a vote for the mayor, they're a dictator. But that's just how it is. So I don't buy that argument. I just don't think it's a logical argument. In the Canterbury Regional Council case, which some of you will know about, there was a logical argument for one person, one vote, because effectively some parts of that community had 2 votes and some had 1. So the law that was put in place to deal with the Canterbury Regional Council situation, again by the Labor Party, was flawed. This law is not flawed if it operates in a manner that it should operate in. So I guess the reason that I'm in the place I'm in, because I don't like division in our community, I do think the collective always will make sensible decisions, and so I consequently support it. That's probably me, but done. Cool.
Ngā mihi ki a koe, Ian. Thank you for your kōrero, and thank you for giving the history, particularly if Ian's kōrero who talked about the change of legislation that happened around the Electoral Act. And I think one of the pivotal things that I want to give tonight, connected to his kōrero, is at the time when there were binding referendums from 2002 up into 2021, 24 councils tried to establish wards. And the outcome of that referendum meant that only 2 were successful of the 24. Hence why the government of the day at the time then removed the legislation to have binding referendums, and it was up to the councillors of the day, which is how this ward was established, that the council of the day, and two of them are sitting to my right, the mayor to my left, I'd mihi to you, Andrew, but I think your decision was a bit different, and they established the ward through the idea, the legislation, that you didn't have to have a binding referendum. This time, the pendulum swings again, and we're here for this binding referendum. You would have seen, some of you today would have already received your voting papers, so you have up until the 11th of October to make your decision. Before I say goodbye to those that are online and live stream, and we go into an open floor, which will be private and it won't be live stream, I do want to give everyone the chance here in this room and those watching a little bit of a kōrero from our Māori perspective of why it's important. Ian touched upon what is the difference between Māori that stand in the general seats and those that stand in the Māori ward, and he said it perfectly. It's that Māori communities chose that representation. So there's a difference between representation and service. Whether you're an urban ward, a rural ward, or a Māori ward, you commit an oath where you serve everyone. And we do. We serve everyone, and that includes the mayor. Representation is when you're mandated to speak on their behalf. So the 5 urban fielding, whoever you choose on the 11th of October, you have chosen for them to be your voice, for them to represent you. You trust them. For the rural community, you will choose your 5 that you trust to be your voice, you trust for them to represent you. It is the same with Māori communities. They want to choose who their voice is. And that is the power of Māori wards and Māori representation, that Māori communities get to choose. I think it's important for me to state too that Māori serve all. It has been a privilege to serve everyone in the community while I represent Māori. I also want to touch on one of the narratives that have been circulating, that this is a race-based ward. I disagree with that. How can it be a race-based when anyone, any race, can be a candidate? That's right. You do not have to be Māori to stand in the Māori ward. You only have to want to represent Māori communities. And Māori are a community. Here in Manawatu, we have 2 waka, 6 iwi, 10 hapu, 12 marae. We have Hatapora College, Manukura that was born here in Tahuri Wakanui hapu of Ngāti Kaupata, and our iwi kura. We have businesses. We have social services here. We are a community that is intergenerational. We have urban Māori, we have rural Māori, and it's so important for them. We are united that we would like a Māori ward. That is unanimous across all the marae. So please know that there's a responsibility we all have, that when we make the decision between now and the 11th of October and we tick it, that we actually ask ourselves, who does this impact? What community does my vote impact, whether it's a yes or a no? So ngā mihi kia koutou to those online. I'm going to ask Richard now to close it. And I wish you all the best. Please vote yes. Us 4 will be. Ngā mihi panel. Right.